Hey y'all, welcome to Cross Politics on the Fight Laugh Feast Network. Pastor Toby, I'm the Water Boy. Chalk Knox will be back tomorrow, Tuesday, and should be a fun week once Knox gets back. But you have us now, and the Ted Cruz Tucker Carlson thing is not going away. The conversation keeps rolling, and today we're going to kind of focus on kind of the whole Israel conversation that apparently went on for about 30 minutes during the interview.
Oh yeah, no, it was kind of spicy.
Yeah.
And you know, they're talking about the Iran thing, but then they start talking about Israel, and then Tucker says, "You're calling me an anti-Semite," and then Cruz stood on a table and he
body slammed Tucker.
And it was like WWE wrestling, and no, not really, but like as far as like interviews go, it was kind of WWE. It was,
and so yesterday on last week we kind of focused on the covenant conversation, or the conversation that got into covenant.
Yeah, who are the people of God?
Theology. Yep, Israel is Israel as a nation, the covenant people of God, and so forth.
Yeah.
But I'd say this other part of the conversation was the second most important part of the conversation.
A 2-hour conversation.
I know. Yeah.
I finished it, by the way.
Did you?
Yeah. Oh yeah. So it's like, I mean, it was like heated to the very end.
Yeah.
One of the guys here in the studio was like, yeah, they was like fighting to the end, and then all of a sudden they're like, it was great talking to you. And that was over. It was like, it really was like that. It was totally like that. It was like, they were like at each other's throats, and they're like, you know, why are you calling me an anti-Semite? I'm not calling you. And like, thank you for coming in. Thank you. That's really great.
Yeah.
What a weird way to end the conversation. I wonder, like, I kind of like want to be a fly on the wall after that. Like the cameras go off and you're like, then what?
Yeah.
I don't know. Anyways.
No eye contact after that. I think I'd have to go have a beer with that buddy afterwards.
Yeah,
you know, it's like, we need to go have a beer now.
I mean,
and have some fun.
I mean, then they're friends. Like, they've talked before and stuff, but it was like a pretty heated exchange and kind of spicy.
So here's where we get into like Israel, APAC, that part of the conversation. Go ahead and roll this first clip.
I've never taken money from the Israel lobby. Have you?
Taken money from the Israel...
From APAC.
Do you know how APAC raises money?
What?
For elected officials, like what they do, like what the actual mechanics is?
I get that. I mean, they go to people who are sympathetic to Israel and raise money and then send it to candidates who agree with them.
So what they'll do is, in my last election, APAC endorsed me.
Really.
And they'll host a fundraiser. And they'll host a fundraiser in Dallas or Houston or Atlanta or New York or LA. And they'll do a fundraiser, and they'll get someone who will host it, and it's usually a business owner, lawyer, doctor, someone who hosts it. And you get typically at an APAC fundraiser 30, 40, 50, maybe 100 people who live in that city,
right?
Who care about a strong U.S.-Israel relationship. Yeah. And if they have 50 people, each of them writes a $1,000 check, and you raise $50,000.
Yeah, I've been to an APAC fundraiser. I know what it looks like.
But that is not. And by the way, there's no representative of the Israeli government there. You have, when you're in Dallas, you're meeting with...
This is such a false and silly conversation. I know all this. The question is are APAC's goals shaped by the goals of the Israeli government to any extent?
Okay, that's
a really
different
simple
from
question.
lobbying on behalf of.
It's a simple question. Are APAC's goals shaped by the goals of the Israeli government? And I'm just going to ask you that question straightforwardly. And if you say no, I think we both know that's not true.
Hey, are they shaped by?
Are they coordinating with the Israeli government?
Are they talking with them? Yes.
Is Israel
directing them? You want to talk about FARA? The law on lobbying on behalf of someone.
Yeah.
It is, I hire you and you lobby on behalf of me. I direct you. Does Israel direct APAC? No, they're not lobbying on behalf of them.
Okay. So APAC is the American Israel Public Affairs Committee, AIPAC.
Yes.
For those of you like me
who needed to Google
it. American Israel Public Affairs Committee. And part of what's going on, I mean, I told you yesterday, Gabe, or when we talked about this before, like, this is a funny part of the conversation to me because I don't like Tucker kind of goes after Cruz.
Yeah.
And it feels to me like there's more going on here. Like, it's like water polo. And there's a bunch of stuff going on under the water that I'm like, okay, what else is going on here that Tucker knows about, that he's trying to get at? I mean, I think he's being fairly straightforward, but at the same time, it's just like, I think there's a bigger piece of this conversation. Yeah. And at least part of it that's coming out of this conversation is APAC is, again, is considered it's a pro-Israel lobbying organization, and is considered one of the most influential lobbying groups in the country, but is apparently is not under the law of a lobbying group that's lobbying on behalf of a foreign nation.
Right.
So it's considered a United States
firm.
lobbying group,
Correct.
like the NRA or something like that.
Yeah.
And so it doesn't come under the requirements or the scrutiny of this other law that he references, the foreign
Government lobbying,
whatever.
Yeah.
And Tucker seems to be questioning the legitimacy of that and saying, is APAC actually, NAPAC is a different thing.
That's funny.
Is APAC actually
kind of crossing over that line?
Yeah, is it actually lobbying on behalf of Israel?
Yeah.
And Cruz is, I don't know, maybe what'd you say?
I feel like he was kind of being a little disingenuous on how he's answering some of the questions, because he kind of knew what Tucker was asking,
right?
But then kind of
but I guess
kept asking for clarification or whatever.
I mean, again, I'm a fly on the wall. I'm trying to understand the conversation. I'm just a guy.
Yeah.
But I can also imagine a situation where like a lobbying group is interested in bringing these interests to somebody, but isn't run by them. And at the same time, I can also understand a situation where that's them being sneaky.
Right.
Where they actually really are, like, they'll do whatever the Israeli government tells them to do.
Yeah.
And they're just being sneaky. And I think it seems like Tucker's insinuating, well, we think they're being sneaky. And there actually are a lobbying group basically on behalf of a foreign government, but they're handled with sort of child gloves, kid gloves.
Well, also, I feel like this conversation to me illustrates a little bit of our current kind of conservative camp politics.
Yeah.
You have what we'd call rhinos, the old guard.
Yeah.
Where they don't question kind of the way things have gone. They don't question, APAC, or they don't question how much money we're sending to Israel. It's just all, hey, this is the way we do it. We've always done it this way, and whatever. Or we'll get to this in a minute. We spy on countries, and it's just what happens. It's just no questioning. And Cruz is asking questions that I've had for.
You mean Tucker?
Excuse me. Yeah, sorry. Tucker has been asking questions that I've had, and I think I'd say, whatever we want to call this, the new right. The newer conservatives that are growing up and out of the not part of the baby boomer kind of rhino era, and we're kind of like questioning everything.
Play the clip where they talk about the country spying on each other, and how much money is being spent.
Yeah,
our military support for Israel is massively in America's national security interest, and it benefits us enormously.
Well, before we can make independent judgments about whether or not that's true, and I'm certainly open to it, I think we need to know what it costs. So, what's the annual cost of defending Israel? Do you know?
$3 billion a year.
No, that's the aid. But I mean, the cost of the weapons, for example, the cost of U.S. personnel there, the cost of moving ships to the region, which we're doing right now, the cost of moving tankers to the region, all of that. Do we know what the cost is?
So look, the last week, I don't know. And there's some lag when the administration, under the Constitution, the commander-in-chief has control of the armed forces. And so President Trump has made some decisions that we'll know the cost over time, but I don't know the last week. I don't have visibility on that. The annual cost is $3 billion. It's a 10-year memorandum of understanding, and that's the principal driver of the cost. But let me make a point. We get massive benefits from Israel. Israel shares the Mossad is one of the best intelligence sources on the planet.
Can you elaborate? And again, I'm going into this as someone who's always liked Israel and still does. But I also think at this point, given where we are, it's fair to ask rational questions about what the benefits are.
Good.
So does Mossad share all of its intelligence with us?
Oh, probably not, but they share a lot. Really? We don't share all of our intelligence with them, but we share a lot. It's a close alliance.
Do they spy domestically in the United States?
Oh, they probably do, and we do as well. And friends and allies spy on each other. And I assume all of our allies spy on us.
That's okay with you?
Part of the reason socialism doesn't work is the mantra from each according to his abilities to each according to his needs doesn't work. As a conservative, I assume people act in their rational self-interest.
So it's conservative to pay people to spy on you?
It's conservative to recognize that human beings.
This whole part of the conversation, I don't think the rest of Twitter or the internet has said and commented anything on this.
Right.
And it's kind of surprising how Ted Cruz is just like, yeah, it's just the way it is.
Right. Well, and it's weird. It's like, actually, he says, so he's like contrasting socialism.
Yeah.
With like conservatism, and then it's like, I just assume everybody operates in their own
in this Cold War
rational self-interest. And I'm like, but is it really in your rational self-interest to treat your allies as enemies?
Which is what spying is. It's
right.
an act of war.
Yeah. This sometimes comes up in pastoral situations.
Okay. I was illustrating with the guys about this. Yeah.
Like I've had people say like, I'm going to record,
this conversation with my wife
or my husband or my whatever. And I'm
going to put a tracking device on my wife.
Yes. And and it's like, okay, is there ever a time to do that? Okay, maybe.
Yeah.
But I always say, if you do this, you are beginning to treat this person who you have a trust relationship with as an enemy.
Yeah.
That's what you're doing. Now, I don't think that's always intended.
Yeah.
And sometimes it happens, and I say, okay, you need to go tell them that you recorded this conversation, and you need to go tell them that and I know there's different laws in different states, and people say, well, it's legal. It's legal to do it.
Yeah.
No. Like,
what's the Christian thing to do?
Yeah. What are you actually doing?
Yeah.
And to begin to record a conversation. When you don't announce that, I mean, it's one thing to have a conversation, to meet with somebody and be like, hey, do you mind if I record this conversation? I might want to go back and, remember it later. Yeah. Like, okay, that's totally legitimate. You can ask.
Or replay it so I know myself and what I said and whatever I went wrong.
I want there to be accountability for me or whatever.
Yeah,
whatever. Okay, you can ask. That's totally legit.
Yeah.
But if you're surreptitiously, secretly recording or putting a tracking device on somebody, you are implicitly saying, I do not trust you.
Yep, that's right.
And that is beginning to treat somebody like
an enemy, because you don't trust your enemies.
Exactly. So it is. Now, I think Cruz is probably right that this all happens, including America, spying on our allies,
Britain, whatever.
So he knows. Like, I think he knows that if he actually comes down hard on this, like he's
condemning his own country,
implicating the United States of America. But I really appreciate Tucker saying, you think this is okay?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and this is part of like, okay, when the argument for Christian nationalism, we want to say we're a Christian country, and so we need to act like it.
So act like Christians.
That's very basic.
Right.
And so, which means we shouldn't be spying on other friends. To your point of like, I was spying on my wife. Like, I'm not trusting her. It's an act of war. Right. I tell my kids when my kids have lied, growing up in our household, we go through the discipline process. But one of the things I tell them in the discipline process, I'm like, hey, when you lie to us, you're treating your parents like your enemies. That's that's what lying is. Right. Don't treat us like your enemies.
Right. And if you get to the point where now, like, if trust is so broken down in your house that you have surveillance cameras
everywhere,
for your kids or something like that. Like, I mean, I understand that, like, you might have an extreme scenario where
your kid's stealing out of your mom's purse,
whatever. But it's like, but you have to recognize that when you get to that point,
something
is really off and wrong, and it's a little bit weird and disingenuous to say, "Oh yeah, we're friends."
Yeah, exactly.
No, that's not how friends treat each other, and that there's an implicit attack on the trust and the friendship.
That's right. And this isn't even talking about like. I mean, Tucker's point, he's like, we're paying Israel $3 billion to spy on us.
Right. Yeah.
And you're okay with that.
Yeah. This is in our and Cruz started this whole clip by saying it is so much in our interest. To support Israel.
To be friends with Israel and support them.
It's so worth it.
We get so much out of it. So much value out of it.
And Tucker's pointing out that, and part of apparently what we get out of it is spies.
Yeah. And I think, but again, this goes back to if we're a Christian nation, we don't spy on our friends.
Right.
We just that's just a no touch zone.
Right.
Now, unless we're gonna go into war with them, we're gonna spy, or unless we enter a Cold War, whatever.
We wouldn't call that friendship.
But we wouldn't call that friendship.
Right.
Right.
Yeah, and we have to be clear about this is we're actually friends with you. We're actually allies, and we trust one another.
And
I think there's situations where maybe we say, we're not really friends.
Yeah.
Maybe we're co-belligerents on certain things, but we're not.
We don't trust each other, so we spy on them.
But we have, But like, I think we should sort of be open on that. Like,
just be honest.
We have different categories, and like we have common enemies. That's what a co-belligerent is. But that doesn't mean we have common values.
Yeah.
An ally and a friend is someone who we have common values with. A co-belligerent is someone we have a common enemy, but maybe not shared values.
Yeah.
And so we don't particularly trust them.
Yeah. Yeah.
But we're thankful that maybe at this particular point we have the same enemy.
You sit in church week after week, embracing the truth of God's word. You believe the gospel and claim Jesus Christ as your Lord. Yet you continue to struggle with pornography. You feel like a hypocrite, returning to the sin you hate that mocks the God you love. You desperately wonder, is lasting freedom even possible? Yes, you can overcome pornography, but not alone. 2 Timothy 2:22 says, "Now flee from youthful lusts and pursue righteousness, faith, love, and peace with those who call on the Lord from a pure heart. Only by repeatedly running from sin to Christ with other believers can you hope to enjoy lasting freedom. You can live with purity and integrity. Take courage, seek accountability, and do whatever is necessary. Get equipped at accountable2you.com."
Finish this clip.
Yeah.
There's a little bit more here.
By the way, Tucker, it's a very weird thing. The obsession with Israel. When we're talking about foreign countries,
It's hardly an obsession.
you're not talking about Chinese. You're not talking about Japanese. You're not talking about the Brits. You're not talking about the French. The question: what about the Jews? What about the Jews?
Oh, I'm an anti-Semite now.
Senator, you're asking the
You
questions,
just
Tucker.
told me.
You're asking, why are the Jews controlling our foreign policy?
Senator,
That's what you just
I am
asked.
hardly saying that, and I have.
That is
many-
exactly what you just said.
See, I think Cruz is being defensive. I also think,
And I don't think he's being that, back to my disingenuous point about not like answering the real question that he knows Tucker's answering, asking.
But I do think that is like the question that he asked Tucker is what Tucker asked him. Like, is Israel having an undue influence on our politics?
Yeah.
He used the word Jews, and immediately Tucker says, "You're calling me anti-Semite."
Yeah, right.
And which is rhetorically effective.
Yeah.
But I think a little slippery on Tucker's part.
Yeah.
Because I think it was like that. No, that is
He
actually
jumps from here to here.
That is actually what you asked him. You did. You are asking him, is the Israeli government having an undue influence on us?
Yeah.
No, but I think Cruz is being defensive.
Yeah.
Because the reason why they're talking about Israel is because Israel is the one that's in a war with Iran. I mean, the reason why we're not talking about China and Russia and all these other countries right now is because we're sending $3 billion a year to Israel. We are one of their biggest supporters.
Yeah.
And they are now in a war
with Iran.
Yeah. I mean, that's why we're talking.
Also, in the interview, they talked about Ukraine and Russia.
Yeah.
So other things came up.
Oh, yeah. They got there eventually. And again, that's actually how the last 20 minutes was spent with them arguing about that.
Yeah.
And then, thank you for coming on the show. That's how I hope.
Say hi to your wife. For me.
Yeah.
Tell your wife I said hi.
But I think there's some points on either side where I'm like, that guy's got a point. He's got a point. But I do think that it is that Tucker is asking a reasonable question.
Yeah.
And I think Cruz is either
he's prickly about it.
Yeah, and he is prickly about it, and he either doesn't understand or is being intentionally politically obtuse.
Yeah, I remember when the war with Afghanistan happened after the Twin Towers fell. I remember that turned into a 17-year war and somehow ended up in Iraq with no explanation. And Saudi Desert Storm.
Yeah, Kuwait, Iraq before
weapons
that.
of mass destruction. All this stuff.
Yeah.
And over time, you just like, okay, those answers aren't satisfying to me.
Right.
But the old guard just keeps giving them.
We have to recognize that we have had a spate of bad involvement in other countries. And maybe going back to Vietnam, going back to I don't know exactly, but at the very least,
a lot of people would say we should have never gone into Vietnam.
But in my lifetime, I can at least look back and be like, Kuwait, Iraq, Afghanistan.
Afghanistan should have been very pointed and strategic and quick.
It's one thing to make a strategic surgical strike.
Yep. And then another thing to be there for 17 years.
Yeah, exactly. And then to have an embarrassing
exit.
Our generation, I guess, maybe Gen X and following, we've seen a whole bunch of bad interventionist stuff.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
The challenge, though, is not every situation is the exact same situation as it was before.
Yeah.
And so it's like, and this is, one of the things that, is being pointed out about different things. So, ever since World War II, the post-war consensus is sort of like anybody who's into nations, anyone who's into family values and religion is Nazi.
Uh-huh.
And it's like, that's been like, you're Hitler.
Yeah.
You're a Nazi. You're into nation, you're into family, you're into
more. Well, Black Lives Matter even basically says that.
So was Hitler.
Yeah.
And so, but that's a version of the same thing is assuming that every conflict is always a repeat of the previous conflict, which it isn't. History moves forward. Now, history echoes, history rhymes, as people say, but it's not the same situation every single time. And so that's the thing that I think we've got to have more of a conversation about is, I have no interest in getting involved in some foreign conflict that really doesn't involve us. That doesn't need to involve us at all. Not interested in that at all.
Yep.
However, is Iran developing a nuclear weapon?
Mm-hmm.
That's a question.
That's what's being reported.
It's being reported. Now, we've also been told in the past that Iraq had, weapons of mass destruction, which never materialized. Yep. I think the instinct, Tucker brings this up a number of times in the interview, is to say, why are we not just more concerned about, he brings up Washington, D.C.
Yeah.
Like, he's like, Washington, D.C. is just full of, homeless bums, drug addicts. He's like, going to any major cities, it's full of tons of problems.
All because of government programs.
Right. But he's like, why are we not fixing our problems?
Yep.
And why are we getting involved in all these foreign problems? And I have two thoughts. One is, again, I do think, the leader of Iran is a complete nut job.
Yeah.
And he actually literally goes on public television and rants and raves about how we need to destroy Israel and America.
Yeah. Yep.
And it's like, so like, would he push the go on the bomb?
Yeah.
And blow up New York City?
Yeah.
Would he blow up Tel Aviv? Yeah, he would.
Yeah. Yeah.
There's no reason.
Why would you not think that?
Right. And it's like, so
he's giving us every reason.
So the argument is often like, so you have, problems in your house, problems with your kids, problems with your marriage. You're like, don't you need to get your own house in order first before you help the neighbors with their problem?
Yes.
And I would say, yes, absolutely, normally.
Yep.
Okay. But what if your neighbor has a nuke?
Yeah.
Okay. And like, you have marriage problems and you really do need to fix your marriage.
And he's a drunk and he's crazy.
And he's over there and he's throwing bottles and he's shooting, AK-47 in the air.
And he goes on YouTube every night.
Yeah. It's like, and I'm going to bomb you. It's like, so like, it's not quite as simple as just saying you have like, yes, your priority should be your marriage. Your priority should be, but if you don't have a home, if you don't have, a city to take care of, then you failed also.
Yeah.
But I think what is the danger, and this goes to your point about maybe what the new conservative right or whatever is tempted to do, is what you're tempted to do is act in bitterness.
That's right.
And what bitterness does, I say this, and I just said always, bitterness loves to say always and never.
Yeah.
Okay. So if you say you always or you never, you
never support me.
Yeah.
You always do this.
99.9% of the time there's bitterness there.
Yeah.
And so, but there's a temptation. So you, again, in a marriage that's gone sour and they come in and they say, well he always, or she never.
Yeah.
Like, you're like, okay, this is, and the thing is like, that's not true. Like 99.9% of the time, it's like literally not true.
Yeah.
And what you're doing is back to treating each other like enemies.
Right.
You're
painting with a broad brush.
You're acting like Satan. Oof. And you're accusing one another of being worse than they actually are.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, but you can do this with your politicians.
Yeah.
You always
that's true.
Support foreign invention.
Yeah.
You never care about the domestic problems.
Yeah.
Now, are those patterns out there? Sure.
Yeah.
I've been alive through the last 40 years. I saw the same things. I've seen us go into things that we never should have gone into.
Yeah. Well, Biden's illegal immigration stuff. Yeah.
But that's why I go back to, so what you have to do in order to think through this like a Christian is you have to say, okay, these are patterns I've seen.
Yeah.
But that doesn't mean that is exactly what's happening now. Now, those patterns may give you good reason to ask questions, which is why I don't mind the questions Tucker's asking.
Yeah.
What is the threat? How sure are we of the threat? I don't mind him pressing Cruz. Did we show the clip about him asking about the assassination attempts? I don't know if we showed those those clips
on Iran.
Iran, like
we have it, I think, ready to go. So.
You know, the Iranians apparently having hitman. Again, there's assassination attempts on Trump, and Tucker Carlson says, why have we not declared war on Iran if they're trying to kill our president? And Cruz's answer is basically, they really suck at assassination attempts. I'm good with all those questions. I'm thankful for all those questions, but we need to ask them, and then we need to actually get answers. When I'm in a counseling situation, that's what you have to do with a husband and a wife. When you have a situation where people are at loggerheads, you actually have to let them. You have to ask a lot of questions. What actually happened? What did they say? Is that what you think happened? You can't just go off of angst. And I think that's what is driving a lot of new conservatism. And like, you have to recognize that like a nuclear bomb could actually be relatively easily smuggled into any country. It can be done. And they don't have to.
Well, Ukraine smuggled drones into Russia. So why can't you do a nuclear bomb?
This can happen. And so I think we at least need to be aware of that possibility. Maybe it's total farce. Maybe it's bad intelligence. Maybe it's not likely at all. But I think, we need to treat each situation as its own situation while learning from the mistakes of the past. But I think that's something that's really important. Otherwise we're going to be in big trouble.
Again, I think part of what the new guard wants is just like, okay, let's admit we're an empire. Like, let's admit we aren't really a republic anymore, that we're some sort of democratic empire. Let's admit that like we don't really care about states' rights. I just think, and this is where I like, the Tucker's honest questions, but it's like, it's like, pulling teeth to get Cruz to even kind of maybe answer those questions honestly.
Right. Yeah. Or is it honesty? Is it, I don't know. There's all kinds of possibilities there, but I appreciate the conversation. I think we got to keep having these kind of conversations. And I think we should argue, and then be like, hey, have a nice day, Gabe.
Let me buy you a beer. I
got to read this ad.
Okay.
Public houses or pubs are not just places to drink beer, wine, cider, or even something a little stronger. It's also a unique social center, very often the focus of community life in villages, towns, and cities throughout the length and breadth of the world. We here at Cross Politic hope to emulate that for you and yours. That's why you should grab yourself a pub membership at fightlaughfeast.com. Pub membership is our club, and it's the way you support us. It's one of the best ways you can support us.
Come on now.
We need you on this ride with us, so pull up a chair, grab a pint,
That's right.
Join us on this ride at fightlaughfeast.com. Remember, if you download our app, Fight Laugh Feast app, you also have access to all kinds of behind-the-scenes, backstage content, old conference talks, and other special content for our club members as a thank you from us. And also discounts.
Yeah, one of the biggest things right now
to our conference
is every member in your family gets a $50 discount off to the conference. That's our family discount.
So go to fightlaughfeast.com, join the pub, join the club, so that you can come to the conference. In a garden. Long ago, our first parents fell to the Dark Lord's deception, sparking a cosmic war between light and darkness. Today, that battle rages in the hearts of the young, future warriors in a struggle as old as time. Dark forces cloak their lies in promises of peace, wielding imperial government schools to mold children into minions of a godless empire. Yet hope rises. Nearly 10 million kids have escaped, trained by parents and faithful Christian schools in the ways of the light. The resistance is growing, so join the rebellion. October 16th through the 18th this fall at Rocketown in Nashville, Tennessee. The faithful gather to strategize and rally. This is Fight, Laugh, Feast 2025. Train the young to launch them into battle. The Spirit is with us. Christendom's war begins anew. Go to fightlaughfeast.com and register for Fight Laugh Feast 2025 today. School Wars, rebuilding Christendom with your kids.
Can't wait for Knox to get back. Well, you'll see him. I promise, tomorrow. So if you're single, get married. If you're married, have kids. If you have kids, go baptize them until next week or tomorrow. Yep, tomorrow. Love God with your whole heart, soul, mind, and strength. Love your neighbor as yourself. Go fight, laugh, and feast. This is Cross Politic.